Hello and welcome to the Fen Den. I'm your host, Sean Allen Fenn, and my goal is to win your hearts and to change your minds. I wouldn't be surprised if 100% of women had to deal with sexual harassment. 100%. It would not surprise me, and that figure is probably true. I haven't researched it. Admittedly, I haven't done any sort of statistical analysis, but it's totally clear that women deal with this every day. And now, the question is, why has it taken so long for people to have this protest to where they've had enough finally? And the Harvey Weinstein thing kind of released this Pandora's box of all of these other well-known people and celebrities, and the situation is that this is what happens in our culture because of the power play between men and women, and it's inexcusable. It's weird because I don't know how it's possible that it could be stopped. Now, I don't know if it's just something about this culture, but I think if enough women speak out that, we would hope that would make a difference, but I don't know if men behaving badly will ever be a thing that goes away. And we're okay, that's what we have to deal with. So how do we deal with that? Men will always behave badly. People in general are always going to behave badly. But let's not forget that there are a lot more people who don't behave badly. It's just that, remember that bad news gets the most attention. So I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying I can't think of anyone who I know personally, any of my guy friends, who I would ever expect to treat women badly. And I know that my father is one of the most amazing men that has so much integrity, and I know that he would, never do that. And I can't think of any man or any of my friends that would be inclined to have this sort of bad behavior. So the fact that there are enough people who do assault women means that there's gotta be, I don't know if there's a possible way to take testosterone out of I don't know what is causing it. Is it the testosterone? Is it the aggression? Is it the men who feel like they have a certain amount of power and they have this weird twisted way of exercising this power? Or are they sexually frustrated? It might be the latter, that they have this kind of power, and if they're a celebrity, they feel like they can get away with things more than someone who isn't. And so maybe that's why. And besides the fact that these men are acting badly, besides that, it's bad enough, but I also just get disappointed for them if there's someone who I like Louis C.K. is actually someone who I like his comedy. I think the dude's a comic genius. But I remember hearing rumors, I don't even know exactly who I was talking to, but hearing rumors about him before and just kind of, oh, well, whatever, that's too bad. And then this comes out in the news that he has all these accusers of him doing of sexual misconduct. And but even before that, I remember when I was growing up, my dad loved Bill Cosby. And Bill Cosby used to be the funniest comedian. And now here Bill Cosby is accused of sexual misconduct in the worst way. And so, I mean, you can think of so many people who you like, and then they're just a disappointment. So, people are going to disappoint you. Sorry. That's the way it is. And so the question becomes, well, alright, people are going to disappoint me, but I can't disappoint myself. And being responsible for your own actions, for some people, is maybe easier said than done. Because, to be honest with you, I remember a time in my life when I just didn't, I acted badly. I never assaulted anyone, thank God. That's not what I don't think I'm capable of assaulting someone, but the fact that, I think people lose track of their kind of moral compass. And so fortunately, most people, myself included, never did anything terribly wrong, like assault people. But I remember when I was a kid, when I was a little boy, I actually remember going through puberty and didn't know what to do with myself. And there was actually in my class, there was a cute girl that was sitting in front of me, and one day I touched her butt or something, and she immediately swung around and punched me. And I mean, good thing that was. I mean, I learned my lesson when I was a little kid, and when you're that age, you're filled with hormones and your testosterone that you don't know what to do with. So, I mean, thank God that girl's mother raised her right. Is turn around and smack the boy if he does that. And that's something that when you're growing up, you have to you go through these immature stages. But as a full-grown man, it's different, isn't it? And then I don't know what's worse, if people love to watch hypocritical people acting badly. Jerry Falwell was a televangelist, was a preacher, on TV. And there was another guy there was a few of them that I could think of. I don't know if anyone even cares about them or remembers their name now, but there's this guy named Jimmy Falwell who was caught with a prostitute or something. And then there was this guy, what was his name? Jim Bakker. This preacher named Jim Bakker. And there's another famous preacher that got in trouble for hanging out with prostitutes or getting gay with someone. I don't remember what it was. But when religious people act badly, I'm just curious if there's a response, a different kind of response from the world. I think regardless of the way people respond, for these preachers, I remember, because when I was a little boy, my parents actually brought me to this, okay, I don't know if anyone listening remembers this, but back in the 80s, Jim and Tammy Bakker were these TV preachers, and the story is real. It's a really crazy story. If anyone listening follows or know what I'm talking about. And it's actually sad because Tammy Bakker, I think, died of cancer and stuff, and she was actually a really interesting person. I mean, it looks from her story that she was actually a really interesting person after the scandal, and she She was really like, in my humble opinion, she was one of the true like Christian people who have like this like true like heart that you would expect a true Christian to have. And she was criticized a lot because she wore a lot of makeup, and she would show her emotions and be just a character. But I remember she had, for a minute, she had this TV show with, again, I think this is the 80s, so I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but I was fascinated by these people. And she was on this talk show with this guy named Jim J. Bullock. How do I remember this? I don't know. I was fascinated when I was a kid by watching these people. And so, and he was a gay person who was a TV actor. He was on this sitcom. I don't remember the sitcom that he was on. Too Close for Comfort. It's all coming back to me. That was the name of the TV show. And so he was an actor on that, but then he was, like I said, an openly out gay person who actually had a funny sense of humor and stuff. And Tammy Faye and this guy did this talk show together. And at that time, like in that religious community, she got a lot of backlash for being friends with a gay guy. And I mean, in this day and age, we're like, what's the big deal? But back then, it was like really scandalous. It's crazy. And as for her husband got in trouble for something. I think they got in trouble for embezzlement, and he was with a hooker or something, or he had an affair with some lady, and then she went and did Playboy magazine and made this big scandal. It's this crazy story that happened. But I bring that up because I think this is interesting, is the public reaction of different people, different characters in the world acting badly. And I think the public reaction doesn't really matter in this way. It doesn't matter because people are always going to judge you. And if you're acting badly, like, you're going to get you're going to get in trouble, and you're usually going to get what you deserve if you are doing bad things. But here's what I think is interesting is the person who acts badly is what they do. What do they do after they get caught? I think this is a really interesting point because, for example, this story just broke about Louis C.K. getting those accusations, and there's been no comment from him. When the press wanted a statement from him, he just remained silent. And that's consistent with the rumor that I heard that I mentioned, was like that he was really evasive on the phone with someone who confronted him about it. But what the person does after they get caught is really more fascinating to me than the story itself. Because it's always like how you choose to react that alters your future. So, for example, the TV preachers so religious people acting badly is usually in these cases they would react with this kind of feeling of like asking forgiveness from people. And I think that is really the right thing to do. Judge them for however you want to judge someone. And if what they did is wrong, it was wrong. If they need to be punished and go to prison or whatever, then so be it. But regardless of that, if they ask for forgiveness publicly, does the public forgive them? And even if they do, like, how does that influence your perception of them? And I think that's more of a interesting thing to me, because so far, I don't know, because I try not to pay too much attention to bad news, and I try not to pay too much attention to people who act badly, because I just don't want that in my head, you know? I don't want to be like absorbed with it. So that's why, and this is going to be a contradiction. I'll just warn you. This is going to totally be I'm going to contradict myself. That's why I don't pay attention to Trump. And by even speaking about it, I'm paying attention to Trump, and I'm admitting that. So anytime you talk about someone, you're adding more fuel to the fire just by saying their name and stuff. So that's all. I'm not going to talk about him anymore on this podcast, known as The Fen Den, with your host, Sean Allen Fenn. Do you remember what my goal is? That's right, is to win your hearts and to change your what? Your minds. That's right. So I'm making time because I'm committed to you. And I know I've said something that someone has an opinion about. And so I want to hear from you. Send me a message. Follow me on social media at Sean Allen Fenn. If you agree with me or don't agree with me, that's cool. Let me hear it. So the difference is how you react to something. So do you react if you're caught acting badly, if a celebrity is caught acting badly? How many times do they publicly ask for forgiveness? I think that is the most powerful thing, and it's assuming it's sincere. And I can't really imagine someone not being sincere to be able to say that, to like ask the public for forgiveness. Like, for example, what will Louis C.K. do now with his career? I don't know, it's too hard to say. I don't know if it will hurt his career. This is interesting, because with Bill Cosby, it totally hurt his career because of what he was known for, his style of comedy. It's like, you know what would blow my mind? And I'm not saying this has happened. I'm not saying this is true, and I'm not saying this has happened. So don't. This is not real. But what I'm going to say next is not real. But Jerry Seinfeld is known to be a sexual predator. What would happen? Again, it's not true. He's not, as far as I know. But I think that would, if in that hypothetical situation, again hypothetical, that would most likely hurt his career, because he's known as like first of all, he's really, really funny. But second of all, you wouldn't expect that of him. But with Louis C.K., it's not that you expect it, but I mean, his jokes are so much about masturbation, and like, he even has a joke I heard him say about, well, I'll just play it for you. Check this out.
It's a weird selection process that we have. Dating really is how we evolve as dating. It's how we choose each other. And dating is a real drag for a lot of people, but I always think it's a nice thing. You know, when I see a date, I'm always happy when I see a couple on a date, because it means people are still trying, you know? You see a couple on a date, it means there's still courage out there. It takes courage to go on a date, for both sides. Two very different kinds of courage. The male courage, traditionally speaking, is that he decided to ask. He went up to a random woman who he has no idea if she's going to like him or not, and he walked up to her, terrifying. Everything in your body's telling you, just go the fuck home and jerk off, don't do this. But he walked up and said, hi, yes. And she's like, no, give me a second. You try to get through this membrane of, and then if it works and you say, you want to go out sometime? Sometimes she'll say yes. And if she says yes, that's her courage. And the courage it takes for a woman to say yes is beyond anything I can imagine. A woman saying yes to a date with a man is literally insane and ill-advised. And the whole species' existence counts on them doing it. And I don't know how do women still go out with guys when you consider the fact that there is no greater threat to women than men. We're the number one threat to women. Globally and historically, we're the number one cause of injury and mayhem to women. We're the worst thing that ever happens to them. That's true. You know what our number one threat is? Heart disease. That's the whole thing. That's it. Just our own heart going, dude, you can't keep doing this. I told you 3 strokes ago that this is not smart.
Okay, so we expect it from some people, and it can be disappointing. But as far as I know, Bill Cosby never came out and admitted it and said, I'm sorry. And, and I know, remember Bill Clinton, when he got busted with Monica Lewinsky, he denied it. And why is he still like a respected politician? I mean, he has charisma and stuff, but I just wonder if there's some kind of like weird double standard depending on the power. Okay, not just the power play between men and women, that's bad enough, but what about the power play of the position of the person who is behaving badly and their status in the public view or the public eye? So, for example, Bill Clinton did not lose the presidency when he was busted with Monica Lewinsky. Because his status is the President of the United States. And I promised I wouldn't talk about who again, but it's a weird predicament when the President of the United States, what do you do with that person in the highest basically the highest power in the world? I mean, just to keep it simple, let's say it's the highest power, the highest position you can have in the world is to be President of the United States. Let's just say that. I don't know if this is true, but you can imagine how it's being a leader of the free world. It's like a pretty big deal. So, like, what happens? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It's the interesting thing, though, that I want to bring up is the power between the public and the status of the person who's behaving badly, and how are we as a public collectively, how are we hypocritical in punishing them? Like, for example, Bill Clinton didn't really get publicly punished because most people still like him, and the public generally still likes him. And not even taking into account the political people like Republicans or whatever, but just the public at large. How do we treat them differently? So, what is the social status of Louis C.K.? Is he rich and famous enough to where it won't hurt his career, or is his subject matter already kind of revealing who he is, so we don't hold him accountable in the same way? And with Harvey Weinstein, with this character, it looks like he's already been a disgrace to his company, and they want to even remove his name from the company and stuff. So he had a high status in Hollywood, but he wasn't really like publicly known otherwise. In the, not like the president of the United States is well known, or not like a famous comedian is. So how do we treat people? Are we fair? I mean, what does that even mean? But do we? I was gonna say how can you say what's fair, and like that opens up another series of questions, like, well, who's to determine who's the judge here? But if there's a criminal case like there is against Bill Cosby, well, I haven't really been following it that closely, but I wonder if like Bill Cosby can go to jail or whatever for raping women by slipping them roofies or whatever he did. And as for Louis C.K., chances are he won't go to prison for this because, I don't know. I just think it's more interesting to ask how, if like across the board, if you, and I agree with this, if you say that there's no excuse for men assaulting women, or there's no excuse for sexual misconduct, then how do you let Bill Clinton get away with it? I mean, how do you still let him have public speaking engagements? So how do you hold him to, like, how do you let him get away with it and you don't let Louis C.K. get away with it, or Harvey Weinstein? Is it because he's the president of the United States? Is it because he did enough like good things to make up for the bad thing that he did? Is that what it is? I mean, maybe as a president, he was just well liked, and the economy was good while he was in office and stuff. So what are the factors, and who can hold collectively the public accountable for how we judge the person behaving badly? And do we just across the board make every man punished equally in the same way? Like, send Bill Cosby to jail, send Louis C.K. to jail, you have to send Bill Clinton to jail too. Right? Am I wrong about that? Let me know if you think I'm wrong about that. I'm at Sean Allen Fenn on social media. You're listening to The Fen Den, my podcast that I'm making time to give you because I really think we should talk about some things. In fact, here's another topic that has really been on my mind, that's been on everyone's mind, and that is gun violence. And there's an argument between the sides of gun control and the sides that are against gun control, like NRA people who collect guns and shoot guns. And I mean, it's a free country, and gun enthusiasts should not, I really don't believe they should have their rights taken away from them to where they can't shoot guns. I am for stricter regulations for gun control. And I think we should start by looking at the intention of the Second Amendment of the United States that reads, the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution reads that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Notice that the wording was about a well-regulated militia is necessary. The wording it can be totally, like most things, can be misinterpreted, misconstrued, taken out of context. I mean, just like Bible verses can be totally taken out of context, so can things like the Constitution. It's just that the fact that it reads a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So my question is, where is this regulated militia, and when have they ever been relevant? Because I know there's crazy white dudes that go around thinking they're militia and waiting for the apocalypse. And granted, the recent mass shooting, one of many that happens every day that we're totally desensitized to, the shooting in Texas, where the gunman was taken down by someone else with a gun. Okay, so I want to get into a couple of points here. Number one, going back to the Second Amendment issue, I'm curious to know how many states actually have a well-regulated militia. In order to have guns, I'm reading the Second Amendment as it's required that in order to have guns, so that the state can remain a free state for the security of the state, that there needs to be a well-regulated militia. But what I'm seeing is that there's enough crazy white dudes with some kind of little gun club that they're calling a militia, and I don't know if I'm not going to make a conclusion, make generalizations, but I'm just saying that it doesn't seem like there are actually regulated militias for each state. Like, as far as I know, there is no well-regulated militia in New York City. And maybe in the state of New York, is there a well-regulated militia in New York? I don't know. But the way it sounds, the Second Amendment, that clause about the right to bear arms, requiring a well-regulated militia, it sounds like that means that the state has the right to bear arms if it's a state militia, but as an individual, it doesn't sound like an individual person has the right to own or carry a weapon. I mean, if you really read the text, that's the way I interpret it to sound, is that it's required that the Second Amendment is written to allow states to have a well-regulated militia, and individuals with guns is not the intention. So just like, I mean, why not just be the Wild Wild West and just have everyone just carry a gun? Every cowboy just shooting their weapon, shooting it up in the air, getting some whiskey, and yeehaw, and pow, and just shoot your gun and shoot down the chandelier when you walk in. I mean, why not? You have the right to bear arms. But I don't think that's the intention. And it seemed like the NRA has a lot to do with like the way it's perceived. And I imagine if you follow the money trail, that's all it is. And the problem is we're dealing with weapons. I mean, we're talking about actual weapons that are designed to do nothing else. Their main design, their one and only purpose. Here's the other point that I wanted to touch on, is the ridiculous arguments that compare, like, you've heard these arguments about, well, you know, if you outlaw guns, you know, guns don't kill people. People with guns kill people. And, you know, there's more deaths in swimming pools every year than there are guns. So why not have swimming pool control? Make swimming pools regulated. Swimming pools illegal. So outlaw swimming pools. Okay, no one can swim. The swim-free zone. Because people die in swimming pools. But also automobiles. More people die in car wrecks than they do from bullets. Okay, granted. Okay, fine, that's true. More people die in car accidents. More people die in airplane crashes. More people drown in swimming pools. But you can't say that an automobile is the same as a gun, and you can't say that a swimming pool is the same as a gun, because one is a vehicle that more people don't die in than do, and one is recreation. You can't say they're the same thing, and that's the stupidest argument I've ever heard. When someone tries to say that they're opposed to gun control because automobiles kill people too. Well, duh, but they're not designed to be weapons. That's not their primary intent. That's not what their first use is designed to be. You know what I mean? It's a stupid argument. And so the other argument that people say is, well, strict gun laws in Detroit, they have gun control in Detroit or Chicago, but they still have high gun violence. So that just proves that gun control doesn't work. Well, duh. If you have gun control in one state, but the surrounding states, you don't have the same level of gun control, and the whole United States, you don't have equal gun control, everybody on the same page, what do you think is going to happen? Those guns are going to come in from the surrounding areas to the populations that are just violent neighborhoods, just because of other social factors racism. Did you know that the suburbs are totally designed to be totally racist? And why do I think that's true is because the way they designed the suburbs, the laws were written in a way where they strongly, and this is all free information that you can double check, but the banks and the houses were strongly encouraged to get white people in there, and they would discourage black people and people who weren't white from moving into the neighborhoods, financially. Okay. Granted, I'm not explaining it really in depth in super duper detail, so I'm not going to get into it. Besides, but just to make this point that there's all kinds of socioeconomic factors, but on the issue of gun control, we have just stupid arguments. I mean, so what do you do? So how can you prevent it? I mean, in the United States, we're just so desensitized because there's mass shootings every month. And it's a wonder that that we put up with it. We're just okay, Second Amendment, you can have, what's the argument to have guns? What do people say that they want to have guns? What good is it? Oh, if you you're allowed to, you need to protect your home if you have a burglar break in. You need to be able to protect yourself if you get robbed. Okay. Under that scenario, what are the odds of that happening where how many times are you going to shoot an intruder and protect your family? How many times does that happen compared to the number of times that there are guns in the home and a toddler picks up the gun and shoots himself or shoots someone in the house. Isn't that more frequent? Okay, I'm not saying that the micro level is the same as the macro. In other words, like a toddler who accidentally shoots his dad in the foot is not the same as every case, and it can't be applied the same way as every case. And as far as base rate fallacy, where there's a tendency to ignore the base rate information, like general information, and focus on specific information. So I'm not saying like that specifically there is more likelihood of a toddler shooting his father in the foot, and that is the reason that all guns should be banned. But I am saying that it's more likely when an individual has a gun that it will be more harm than good. And there are definitely statistically more cases that point to this romanticized notion of someone being able to be a hero and save their family because they have a gun in the home and they save their family from intruders, and that's why we should be allowed. That's why there should not be gun control. But the reality is much different than that. The reality is that it's more likely for that a gun, a weapon, is going to be used for suicide, or it's going to be used for crime, or it's going to be used for mass shootings. It's more likely that it's going to serve that purpose and it's going to be used for that than self-defense. And when you look at the numbers, that's what the numbers point to. And so that's the reality. And the only reason why gun control in this country is such an issue, and why is there so much gun violence, is you follow the money. It's people with money who support the NRA, and someone's getting paid. And it's true. Especially if you look at countries where they don't have the same lack of gun control, but like places like Japan, where citizens don't have AK-47s, and it's a pretty peaceful place. You don't hear of mass shootings in Japan. You don't hear of crazy people that shoot into crowds from the top floor of a hotel, and you never hear of crazy violent people going ballistic and coming into like a workplace or a religious place of worship and shooting people. You don't hear of that happening anywhere but the United States. I mean, sure, there are definitely violent people everywhere. I mean, ISIS is still going to have guns. They're still going to get weapons. But so far, in the United States, no one has protected us from ISIS because of their gun that they had in their home. It's ridiculous. And that's my problem with the arguments of gun people who feel threatened by any sort of regulations that make it more strict to possess a gun. And I'm not saying that I want anyone's rights to be taken away, but I'm saying that it's ridiculous. This is getting preposterous and absurd. And I don't know how we're letting this happen for so long. I would not be surprised at all if there's another mass shooting tomorrow. It would be no surprise, because now just another mass shooting. Here in New York City, last Halloween, when there was this crazy terrorist attack, And as far as I know, it was one crazy dude. And in this case, his automobile was a weapon. But the Halloween parade went right on. It still continued because we won't let the terrorists win in this country. And I'm just saying it's weird. And in that case, this past Halloween in New York City, and that terrorist attack downtown, where was the militia? Where was the New York militia to protect us from that? Where were they? Because that's what the Second Amendment is for, is to allow us to have guns if we have a militia. So why didn't the militia that the Second Amendment provides or allows for, why don't they exist? And why didn't they protect us? Because it's a freaking fairy tale, that's why. It's so ridiculous. I wonder if the crazy people, the crazy rednecks who have their militias, who are waiting for the apocalypse, I wonder if they're waiting to protect us from the government when the government goes bad and like turns against its citizens. It seems like that's what they're waiting for. That scenario, that's an apocalyptic scenario where like there's an evil government and they are going to protect us from the evil government when the government comes to like force us to, I don't even know what. But people have all kinds of crazy ideas. I just get that impression though that that's what the places where there are actual militias. I know I like okay, I'm honestly being biased and honestly like making a generalization, and because my perception is that they're rednecks. So sue me. I'm making a generalization, but am I wrong? Because so far, if there are militias, what are they doing? Well, what have they done so far that justifies their existence? I mean, if someone can tell me, please enlighten me. And follow me on social media at Sean Allen Fenn. You're listening to the Fen Den, where every Friday I bring you the latest and greatest information, and I blow your mind. And you're welcome. I'm happy to do it. And so as I come in for landing on this episode of the Fen Den, I think it's been a really great episode. We've talked about today's issues, and I will leave you with this song. Thank you for being a fan. Thank you for listening to the Fen Den. Thank you for being amazing. Don't forget to be phenomenal. And follow me on social media at Sean Allen Fenn. And go ahead and click the subscribe and the likes. And even if you don't like, that's fine. Just tell your friends. If you hate me, tell your friends how much you hate me. If you love me, tell everybody how much you love me. Because I love you. I love people. I really do. So, be amazing. Be like a scarecrow standing out in a field. Be outstanding. Peace.